The rain had been falling for hours that Tuesday evening, drumming steadily against the windows of Thomas Bennett's modest two-story home. He was in the kitchen washing dinner dishes, his 10-year-old son Jake upstairs doing homework, when he heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Soft, hesitant, almost apologetic. Thomas dried his hands and walked to the front door, wondering who would be out on a night like this. When he opened it, he found two small girls standing on his porch, soaked to the bone. They looked to be about 8 years old, identical twins with long wet hair plastered to their faces. They wore matching pink pajamas that clung to them in the rain, and neither had shoes on their feet. But it was their eyes that stopped him cold, wide with terror. Desperate. "Please," one of them said, her voice shaking. "They hurt our mama. We need help." Thomas's training from 20 years as a police officer kicked in instantly. Even though he'd retired 3 years ago after a line-of-duty injury, he pulled the door wider. "Come inside." Quickly, the girls stepped into the warm hallway, dripping water onto the hardwood floor. They stood close together, holding hands, shivering from cold and fear. Thomas grabbed 2 towels from the hall closet and wrapped them around the girls' shoulders. "You're safe now," he said gently, crouching down to their level. "My name is Thomas. I used to be a police officer. Can you tell me what happened?" One twin looked at the other. Some silent communication passed between them. Then the first girl spoke again. "I'm Emma. This is Ella. We live 3 houses down. The men came tonight. Mama told us to run, to find help. She said go to the house with the blue door." Thomas's door was blue. He'd painted it that color when his wife Susan was alive. She'd always said blue doors meant sanctuary. "What men? How many?" Thomas asked, his voice calm but his mind already racing through possibilities. "3, Ella said softly. "Big men. They were yelling at Mama about money, about something Daddy owed them. But Daddy's gone. He left last year." "They were hitting her," Emma added, tears streaming down her cheeks now. "We heard her crying. She pushed us toward the back door and told us to run. She said find the blue door and tell them to call 911. Thomas was already pulling out his phone. "Jake," he called upstairs, "come down here, please." His son appeared at the top of the stairs, his eyes widening when he saw the 2 soaked girls. "Take them to the guest bathroom," Thomas said. "Get them dry clothes from the donation box in the garage, the one we were going to take to Goodwill. And stay with them. Don't let them out of your sight." Jake nodded seriously. At 10, he'd grown up hearing his father's police stories. He understood that sometimes bad things happened and you had to step up. "Come on," Jake said gently to the twins. "You'll be okay. My dad knows what to do." As Jake led Emma and Ella upstairs, Thomas was already dialing 911. He gave the dispatcher the address 3 houses down, reported a home invasion in progress with an assault victim, and identified himself as a retired officer. He grabbed his old service weapon from the gun safe in his study. He'd kept his license current even in retirement up and checked the load with practiced efficiency. "Units are 2 minutes out," that dispatcher told him. "Please stay on the line. I'm going over there," Thomas said. "There's a woman being beaten by 3 men. 2 minutes might be too long." "Sir, we advise you to wait for her," but Thomas had already hung up. He ran upstairs. "Jake, lock the bedroom door. Don't open it for anyone but me or the police. Understand, Dad? Or do you understand?" Jake nodded, his face pale but determined. "Be careful." Thomas pulled on a rain jacket and ran out into the storm. 3 houses down, a modest ranch-style home. Lights on inside. Thomas approached carefully, using the darkness and rain as cover. He could hear shouting even over the storm. He tried the front door. Unlocked. These men were either stupid or arrogant. Probably both. Thomas entered quietly, his weapon raised, moving through the entryway with the muscle memory of thousands of similar entries during his career. The shouting was coming from the living room. "I don't care about your excuses. Your husband owed us $50,000. He's gone, so that debt falls to you. I don't have that kind of money." A woman's voice, thick with pain and fear. "Please, I have children." "Then you better figure something out." Thomas rounded the corner. 3 men, just as the girls had said. Big men, mid-30s, wearing leather jackets. One was holding the woman by her hair. Another had his fist raised. The third was searching through drawers, probably looking for valuables. The woman is Martinez. He'd learned her name later, had blood running from her nose and a swelling bruise on her cheek. Police. Hands where I can see them. Thomas's voice cut through the room like a blade. All three men spun around. The one holding Sarah released her and she crumpled to the floor. You're not a cop, the biggest one sneered, noting Thomas's civilian clothes. I know all the cops in this district. Retired, Thomas said calmly, which means I'm not bound by quite as many rules about when I can shoot. And right now, I'm seeing 3 men committing assault, home invasion, and extortion. That's plenty of justification. There's 3 of us and 1 of you, old man, another said, taking a step forward. Thomas didn't move. I'm 52 years old and I spent 20 years on the force, 12 of those in SWAT. You really want to test whether I'm too old? The sound of sirens cut through the tension. Multiple units, getting closer. The men exchanged glances. The leader spat on the floor. This isn't over. She's still OSA actually. It is over, Thomas interrupted, because you just committed multiple felonies in front of a witness who used to put people like you away for a living. And those sirens, that's about 6 of my former colleagues who are going to be very interested in having a conversation with you. The biggest man took a step towards Sarah, who was still on the floor. Thomas shifted his aim slightly and put a round into the wall 6 inches from the man's head. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. The next one goes in your kneecap, Thomas said, his voice ice cold. On the floor, face down, all 3 of you. Now, they complied. 2 minutes later, 4 patrol cars screeched to a stop outside. Officers flooded in, weapons drawn. Thomas was setting his gun on the coffee table and raising his hands when Sergeant Mike Chena, an old partner, came through the door. Tommy, what the hell? Home invasion in progress. 3 perpetrators, 1 victim. Thomas gestured to Sarah, who was being attended to by a female officer. The victim's twin daughters are at my house with Jake. They came to me for help. Mike looked at the 3 men on the floor, then at the bullet hole in the wall, then back at Thomas. You discharged your weapon? Warning shot. He was advancing on the victim. I made a judgment call. Mike sighed. You know there's going to be paperwork. I know. Worth it. The paramedics arrived and began treating Sarah. She'd have a concussion, broken ribs, and significant bruising, but she'd live. As they loaded her onto a stretcher, she grabbed Thomas's hand. My girls, she whispered. Emma and Ella. Alia, they're safe. They're at my house with my son. They were very brave. Fresh tears spilled down her bruised face. Thank you. Thank you. At the hospital later that night, after the police had finished with statements and the men were in custody, Thomas brought Emma and Ella to see their mother. The girls had been cleaned up, wearing donated clothes from Jake's sold things, still holding hands. They ran to Sarah's bedside, careful not to hurt her but desperate to be close. You did exactly right, Sarah told them, stroking their hair with her uninjured hand. You were so brave. You saved Mommy. Mr. Thomas saved you, Emma said. You all saved me, Sarah replied. Over the next weeks, the full story emerged. Sarah's ex-husband had been involved with loan sharks. He'd taken money to support a gambling addiction, then disappeared when he couldn't pay it back. The debt collectors had tracked down Sarah, even though she'd had nothing to do with her ex-husband's problems and had divorced him a year earlier. They had no legal right to that money, the district attorney explained to Sarah. Your ex-husband's debts aren't your responsibility, especially after divorce. These men were engaged in criminal extortion and assault. All 3 men took plea deals rather than go to trial. They'd served between 8 and 15 years, but the violence and trauma had left their mark. Sarah was physically recovered within weeks, but the fear lingered. She had trouble sleeping. The girls had nightmares. They'd jump at loud noises, look fearfully out windows, worry every time their mother came home late from work. Thomas found himself checking on them regularly, bringing by dinner, making sure their security system was working. Just being present. You don't have to do this, Sarah told him one evening. You already did so much. My wife died 3 years ago, Thomas said quietly. Cancer. Since then, it's just been me and Jake. We have plenty of room in our lives for a few more people to care about. Jake and the twins had become close. He treated them like the little sisters he'd never had, teaching them how to ride bikes, helping with homework, including them in neighborhood games. Sarah started joining them for dinners, then for weekend outings. Then it just became natural that they were always together. 6 months after that terrible night, Thomas was in his backyard barbecuing when Emma and Ella approached him. They had identical serious expressions. "Mr. Thomas," Emma began, "we've been thinking," Ella continued. "And we want to ask you something," Emma finished. Thomas set down his spatula and gave them his full attention. "What is it, girls?" They exchanged one of their twin glances. Then Emma spoke, "Our daddy left and he wasn't very good anyway. And you're always here. You take care of us and Mama. You make us feel safe." Ella picked up the thread. "So we were wondering, would you maybe want to be our dad, like, for real?" Thomas felt his throat tighten. He looked up to see Sarah standing on the porch, her hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes. She nodded. He crouched down to the girl's level, just like he had that rainy night when they'd knocked on his door. "I would be honored," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I've already started thinking of you that way, to be honest." The twins threw their arms around him. Jake came bounding over, grinning. Sarah joined them, and suddenly Thomas was in the middle of a group hug, feeling more complete than he had since his wife died. A year later, Thomas and Sarah were married in a small ceremony in their backyard. Jake stood as best man. Emma and Ella were flower girls who kept dissolving into giggles. "You know," Sarah said during their first dance, "those men thought they could destroy us with violence and fear. They thought they could break us, but they didn't." Thomas said, "Number, because my girls found you. They found your blue door." Thomas pulled her closer. "Susan always said blue doors meant sanctuary. I never quite believed it until that night." Emma and Ella grew up in a home filled with safety, laughter, and love. They never forgot the night they dragged through the rain in their pajamas, terrified and desperate. But they also learned that sometimes the scariest moments lead to the most beautiful outcomes. They learned that courage means asking for help when you need it, that strangers can become family, that blue doors really do mean sanctuary, and that sometimes, when everything seems darkest, all you have to do is knock. Someone will answer. Someone who will stand between you and harm. Someone who will say the words every frightened child needs to hear. "You're safe now. I've got you." And mean it with everything they have. Thomas retired his old service weapon permanently after that night. He didn't need it anymore. His family was safe, whole, and healing together, but he kept his front door painted blue, just in case someone else ever needed sanctuary.